Today, I'm going to talk about how trauma impacts sleep. Now, sleep is something that we're talking about more and more in our culture, which is such a good thing because sleep is so important for our body to help it repair and replenish. And when we don't get enough sleep, sometimes even just for a couple nights, it begins to greatly impact us physically and emotionally. And a lot of the time, when I see people talking about sleep in general, they often overlook the reason why people with trauma struggle to sleep. So, ideally, when it gets dark, our body will naturally start a wind down process. We actually even have receptors in our skin that signal to our body based on the changing light that it's nighttime. But then what happens when we're raised in a home where it's stressful all of the time, or when we experience traumatic events that happen particularly at nighttime? For a lot of us, night may have been the moments where we heard our parents having really explosive, awful fights. Or maybe we had a father who would come home from work erupting with a temper. Or maybe a mom who would lock herself away in a room and leaving you feeling isolated and lonely. We might then, as adults, find ourselves in a relationship where we have a partner who at night engages in impulsive behaviors, using substances, or maybe even betraying you while out. Now, by now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard the concept, the body keeps the score. And simply what that means is our nervous system remembers what happens to us. Scientifically, this is called implicit memory. Simply speaking, it's the memories that live in our body based on what happened, not things that we're necessarily thinking about. Because it is our body and our nervous system in particular that will begin to register night as being safe or not. And when it is safe at night, right, our body will register that safety. We'll associate night with calmness, and our body will naturally then begin to wind down. But when we experience stress or trauma at night, it will register nighttime as a scary time, a threatening time, an unsafe time when we have to be extra vigilant or extra on guard. There's actually now some really fascinating studies based on the ACEs scale, or the Adverse Childhood Experiences scale, that shows that trauma happening in childhood, the effects of it carry with us, sometimes for as long as 50 years. Science also shows that individuals with a higher ACEs score, so more instances of trauma in our childhood, they actually have a harder time at night staying asleep. And then they're even twice as likely the next morning to feel tired, even after they might have objectively gotten a full night of sleep. Now, these are some really powerful and really long-lasting effects that deeply impact us, not only physically, but emotionally. So if you're listening and you have trauma, or nighttime for you was stressful or not safe, traumatic even, now you have to think more than about just creating a sleep schedule, getting 8 hours and getting into bed. You have to learn how to change how your body registers nighttime. And thankfully, you can do this because we can actually rewire our body's stress response by creating a safe space at night and an environment where you can feel the most secure and where you can be the most at ease. Now, practically speaking, for some of you, this can look like making sure maybe that you're close to your cell phone. For some of us, we get a sense of safety and security knowing that we can access what's on our phone. For others, you might feel safer and more at ease by being really far away from your phone, especially if what is on that phone is stressful or is activating. It can also mean for some of you sleeping next to someone that you naturally trust or who calms you. And for others, it might mean doing the opposite, and it might mean sleeping or being alone at nighttime. Because some people feel better when they're sleeping next to someone, and other people feel safer when they're alone, or when they have more control over what their sleeping space looks like or sounds like. So really, do what is best for you to feel safe and secure. Practically speaking, And this might be counterintuitive to advice you might have heard. For some of you, you might feel safer and more secure if you don't avoid screen time, meaning if you put something on television or your computer or even scrolling. And I know, again, this is contrary to some advice out there, but a lot of times people with trauma or nighttime anxiety, our brain will race so much at night, spiraling usually with stressful or crisis-orienting thoughts, that letting ourselves watch something mindless, maybe if it's even just for a limited amount of time, can be a distraction that might help us soothe us into a better night of sleep. Of course, if you're on the other end of that spectrum and what is online or you're looking at is stressful, then your suggestion might be to avoid that screen time. And then finally, generally speaking, most of us can benefit by having some sort of ritual before bed, right? Cueing our body, not just in the couple minutes before we want to lay our head down and go to sleep, maybe for a couple hours beforehand, where we're beginning to downshift, whether we're taking a warm bath, calling a close friend, journaling, or just turning the lights down lower and the sounds down lower. The more we can prime our body to get ready to unwind, the more likely we then are to feel safer to fall asleep at night. So whatever it is that you find most comforting, build that into a before bed ritual that you either do before you get in bed or even while you're in bed. Now remember, creating new sleep habits is a journey, and your sleep patterns won't change overnight, and you won't necessarily feel differently immediately. But the more you practice and the more you rewire your body to feel safe and secure, the more likely you are to get that sleep that you truly need. I'd love to hear from you listening. How is your sleep? And if it's not where you want it to be, what is one commitment that you can make to yourself this week to help your body get the rest that it needs? Leave it in the comments below.